Hello Yoshimi all over the world, this is Yoshitatsu, and you are watching Wrestling with Regret.
Over the last several years, we have seen a dramatic shift in the in-ring culture of WWE. The company's style has evolved more in the last 5 years than its previous 10, and that change can be seen in who we see in the main event. As more so-called indie darlings are scooped up by the company, so too are we seeing an increase in their prominence. Over time, more and more people who were once considered unfit for WWE have had their time in the sun. And by time in the sun, I mean burned beyond recognition. Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens, two of the most popular wrestlers among hardcore fans. Known for their impressive abilities in the ring, them becoming the top guys in WWE always seemed to be a matter of when, not if. But while their times as champion both started out hot, they were eventually marred with issues that some would say sullied their time in the spotlight. And this week on Wrestling with Regret, it's time to decide which one had the worst championship reign. Seth Rollins as WWE Champion in 2015, or Kevin Owens as the Universal Champion in 2016. For the sake of this argument, I'm breaking it down into 5 different categories. Whichever title reign wins the fewest categories will be deemed the worst of the two. Let's begin. Let's see how it all began for each man, how Rollins and Owens won their respective championships. March 29, 2015. WrestleMania 31 emanated from Levi's Stadium in California. While some fans griped about how all the sunlight ruined their precious need for aesthetic, it was hard to argue that the in-ring action was lacking. During the main event, however, the fans were on the verge of a riot as Roman Reigns was poised to fulfill his destiny and beat Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. But as a certain someone used to say, there's always a plan B.
Heyman screaming, cover him! Turn him, play to the match! What the hell?
As both combatants were laid out, Seth Rollins ran to the ring like a madman and cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, which he won the previous year, making the match a triple threat. The Authority's Golden Boy would end Mania as the new WWE Champion. The following summer, Monday Night Raw was in a rough spot. Finn Balor just became the first person to win the Universal Championship, which was created for Raw in the wake of the brand split 2.0. But the Balor train got derailed immediately when Finn tore his labrum in the match where he won the title. 1 week after the championship was vacated, a 4 corners elimination match was set up on the Red Show to determine the new champion, involving Owens, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Big Cass. In the end, Triple H shocked the world as he aligned himself with Owens, allowing KO to become the champ. Both men won their respective titles in dramatic fashion, and against anyone else, Owens might have won this round, but come on, Seth Rollins making history by cashing in at Mania and winning? There's no contest. Rollins gets the point. Sometimes the best metric to compare championship reigns is the easiest. Let's see which of these guys held onto their belt for longer. Seth Rollins won the WWE title on March 29, 2015, and held on to it until November 4th, when it was vacated due to injury, making his reign a total of 220 days. Meanwhile, Kevin Owens won the Universal title on August 29, 2016, and would go on to hold it for 189 days, dropping it on March 5, 2017. Rollins wins this round handily here, but just imagine how much larger the gap between the two would have been had Seth never gotten injured. Another point for the architect. Now we take a look at each man's quality of work during those championship reigns, their win-loss records, who they beat, and who they were beaten by. For the sake of simplicity, I'm only going to include televised singles matches here. No tag team matches, no multi-mans, no house shows. During Seth Rollins' run as champion, he posted a singles record of 15 wins, 13 losses, and 2 matches ending in a no contest. This was the epitome of 50-50 booking, as Seth traded wins with almost everyone he fought, including Ryback, Cesaro, Kane, and John Cena. Besides Dean Ambrose, there was no one else he looked truly dominant over. Not a great look for the supposed top guy of the company. What's really interesting about his losses is how many of them were by disqualification, 6 out of 13. Usually it was at the hands of J&J Security or as a way to transition into a tag team match, which shows you how often they busted out that dumb plot device. Seth's key victories during his run include Randy Orton at Extreme Rules, Kane at Hell in a Cell, and John Cena at SummerSlam, where he won the US Championship and became the first man in history to hold both titles simultaneously. He also got the rub from Sting at Night of Champions, though the luster on that was faded due to Sting's career-ending injury. Examining Kevin Owens' record is a little more difficult because it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. KO's televised singles record's a paltry 9-5 over those 189 days, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that Kevin was only working Raw while Seth was on both Raw and SmackDown. Had the brand split not been a thing when Kevin was champion, you could extrapolate that his numbers would be roughly double what they were. Much like Seth, Kevin had someone he could always count on to pad his numbers. For Rollins, it was Dean Ambrose. For Owens, it was Sami Zayn, going 3-0 during his time as champion. Kevin successfully defended the Universal title a number of times against Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns during this run, with lots of assistance from then best friend Chris Jericho. He also lost to them on a few occasions, most notably when trying to beat Reigns for his US Championship on the December 26th episode of Raw. Then of course there was the time he lost the title at Goldberg at the Fastlane pay-per-view, but we'll get into that later. So how do you pick a winner for this category? Seth won more than Kevin, but he also lost a lot more. Way more than a champion should, even if they're a chicken shit heel. Owens had a better win percentage, but what did he really do during his time as champion? In the end, I have to give the point to Rollins once again because his big wins were bigger. He continually bested his rival, became a double champion, and he beat an icon. Well, this is embarrassing. In this best of 5 series, it appears that Seth Rollins has already won. But before we formally announce the winner, let's just see if Kevin Owens can make things interesting. Up next, how each man lost their respective titles. This should be depressing. On November 4th in Dublin, Ireland, Seth Rollins was in a match against Kane when a freak landing resulted in his knee exploding, tearing his ACL, MCL, and medial meniscus. With such a major injury, he was forced to relinquish the championship. Meanwhile, on March 5th, 2017, Kevin Owens defended his Universal Championship against the aforementioned Goldberg at Fastlane. As was the style of this older, slower Goldberg, there wasn't much to the match, as a distraction by Chris Jericho caused KO to be squashed by the former WCW champion in record time. After months of putting on great performances with guys like Zane and Rollins and Reigns, it's gotta be disappointing to have your lengthy title run end on such a sour note. Then again, at least he was able to drop the title to someone instead of being forced to vacate it due to injury. Somehow, Owens wins the point here. Alright, KO is officially on the board, and at this point he's playing for pride. Let's look at the final category, what each man's been up to since losing their championship. Seth Rollins was on the shelf for 7 months after his injury, though he immediately returned to the main event scene once he came back in May of 2016. He won the WWE Championship for a second time after beating Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank, only to hold on to it for less than 5 minutes as Dean Ambrose cashed in his briefcase and beat Rollins to the belt lickety-split. The Architect spent the rest of the year in the hunt for both the WWE title and the Universal Championship, but at the time of this video's release has not been able to return to those lofty heights. Despite going against devious heels like Kevin Owens and later Triple H at WrestleMania, Rollins struggled to find his footing as the babyface he should have been when he came back from injury. As I've said before in this show, they pulled the trigger on his face turn long after they should have, and when they finally did, it was for the least sympathetic of reasons. Only now he's starting to get over as a good guy, but it's definitely been a long haul. But hey, at least it's the cover boy of this year's video game. After losing his Universal title at Goldberg, Kevin Owens was involved in a bitter feud with Chris Jericho over the United States Championship that ran until this past May. Since then, Owens has been one of the bigger players on SmackDown as the US Champion, and of course, is the new face of America. America, America. Rollins started off hot when he came back from his knee injury, but then faltered in large part due to a lack of direction. Without a clearly defined character or a great angle for him to sink his teeth into after his feud with Triple H, Rollins has gotten lost in the shuffle. And although Kevin Owens may not be the WWE Champion, he has been able to stay consistent as one of the top heels on the Blue brand. The US Championship has been treated pretty well while resting on KO's shoulder, far better than the last couple of guys to have worn the belt. And since his time with the big red belt was relatively poor, anything after that should be considered an upgrade. For having a better post-championship run, Kevin Owens wins the final round, but by the rules of the debate between these two men, KO had the worst championship reign. I went into this thinking the debate would be so much closer than it ended up being because on the surface, the stories were so similar. Heel wins championship with help of the Authority, either directly or indirectly, holds on to the belt for a long time despite having a disappointing win-loss record, and loses it in unspectacular fashion. But when you look at the little details, it becomes pretty clear that despite its faults, Rollins did have the better championship reign. Even the TV ratings reflected this. I think what really did Owens in was the fact that he was bound to one brand and therefore a limited set of opponents. Rollins had the advantage of working both TV shows and all the pay-per-views, meaning he wrestled a greater variety of people, giving the impression of a richer, fuller experience as champion, even though he never looked all that strong. In this battle of amazing talent with subpar championship reigns, it's like trying to choose between rust or cod liver oil for your ice cream flavor. But the numbers don't don't lie, and while they spell disaster for you at Sacrifice, they also spell a loss for KO in this debate. So who do you think had the worst championship reign? Which ill-fated champs do you want to see me compare in the future? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
I am the violence on the back